A former police official with the San Francisco Police Department is facing a great deal of criticism after CNN obtained some of the racist tweets he sent to his colleagues. Now, the officer in question is Jason Lay, and he was a 6-year veteran of the San Francisco Police Department. He was let go because of the fact that he was being investigated for a sexual assault. Now, during that investigation, prosecutors were able to find these very questionable text messages, and then CNN asked for them and obtained them. Now, with that said, some of the text messages included messages like, "I hate beaners." Okay. He also said, "Indian people are disgusting. Burn down Walgreens and kill the bums. They are all drug dealers in the Tenderloin." That's an area of San Francisco. The officer also referred to a draft of an official incident report as a, quote, "story I wrote today." Probably not the right way to recall an official police report. It's not supposed to be a story. It's supposed to be a factual account of what happened. Lay makes a disparaging joke about President Obama and says he hates basketball player LeBron James. In fact, he referred to LeBron James as, of course, a terrible word. He says, "fuck that Nick." Okay.
So this guy's out patrolling the streets, arresting African Americans, and all other people that he mentioned, and then people go, "What racism? What are you talking about? Lay off the cops. The cops are here to defend us." I guess it depends on your definition of us.
And look, whenever we do these stories about, racial bias within police departments, people think that if you are a minority yourself, you're immune from racism. But you're not. It doesn't matter what your race is. There are plenty of black people that are racist. There are plenty of Asians that are racist. There are plenty of white people. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what you think of other races, how you treat them. And when you are a public official, when you're someone who's supposed to patrol the streets, keep us safe, and you're paid by taxpayers, well, there should be a lot of scrutiny in the way that you talk about other races and the way you deal with other races. So,
So let me just jump on that real quick. And so, number one, can Asians be racist? Of course they can be racist. And notice, by the way, the one race he never goes after is Asians. Okay. So, secondly, if you're in the police force, a lot of times minorities have pressure to outdo the white guys, right? So like, "Oh, I'm one of you guys. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. I'm one of you guys. Yeah, I'll talk about the N-words and the beaners and et cetera." Because remember, everybody, I'm with you guys, not them, right? Now, that doesn't excuse any of his behavior. It doesn't excuse anything he says. And by the way, we don't even know that. Maybe the guy's just a vicious racist having nothing to do with trying to overcompensate, right? But sometimes that happens. That's why sometimes, as JR and I have talked about in the past, it's the black cop that beats people the worst. There was a Philly case where we were talking about that once, right? Like, "I'm going to prove to you guys that I'm one of you and not one of them," right? So there's that phenomenon on top, right? But this guy's a bad guy all around. Here's another example, next graphic. In another exchange referring to African Americans, Lai wrote, and by the way, it could be Lay or Lai, wrote, "They're like a pack of wild animals on the loose." So, and he's out there arresting them day in, day out. So now all of his cases are being investigated. There was another cop who was brought up on charges for stealing. They'd go in and take people's stuff in the Tenderloin as well, right?
They would steal money and drugs from poor people in the Tenderloin.
Yeah. And so that guy gets brought up on charges. They get his phone, and when they look at the evidence, he's saying the same things. So 2 cops in San Francisco, on unrelated cases, they look at their messages, and it is nothing but pure racism through and through in both their messages. That other guy puts 1,600 cases in jeopardy. This guy has also put hundreds of cases in jeopardy. And you know what? Some of those guys did it, and maybe they're going to get off now because of these bad cops.
Right.
And some of the guys didn't do it. But they were, "that's a wild animal, and I'm going to get him, and we're going to get all those N-words, et cetera." Gee, I wonder why the African-American community and minorities don't trust the cops. 2 cops randomly, and they both have all this stuff all over their phones. What if you got all the cops' phones?
Yeah.
And I almost don't want to think about it.
By the way, I mean, look, this is all in the same police department, right? You just mentioned 2 individuals that were caught sending questionable texts, but it's not limited to 2 people. Now, the police captain in this, the police captain in this department claims, it's just a few bad apples. And that's usually the defense we hear when it comes to cases involving police brutality, excessive force, racism. But There were 14 officers, including a captain, that were implicated in sending and receiving such texts.
Yeah.
So there is obviously an issue with the entire department, whether it's the training, the type of people that they attract for the job. Something needs to change. And to say that, hey, these are just a few isolated incidents, don't make any conclusions based on it, I think is naive.
And I want to grant you that those 2 cops are already busted for doing bad things, so I get that they're bad guys to begin with. I get they're not representative of all the cops, but I do fear if this is the culture where it's perfectly acceptable to say this among 14 different cops and no one blinks, well, then you got to examine that culture a little bit. By the way, of course, they also went after gay people, including gay cops. They'd have code words. They'd use the word 528 because that was code for fire alarm. And they're flaming, right? They would do that against, like I said, against other black cops, against other gay cops, etc. They'd laugh behind their back. So you say, oh, they're brothers. No, unless you're black or you're gay or another race that they don't like. Finally, I want to give you a quote from San Francisco District Attorney George Gascon. And he says, I would say about the whole, hey, do you have a right to say this? He says, I would say, okay, if you're a plumber or if you're a carpenter. But if you're somebody that actually gets to put people in jail or in the worst case conditions actually take somebody's life from them and do so lawfully, you don't get to be a racist. I think that's exactly right. So if we give you that power, we give you that badge, we give you that gun, yes, we demand a lot better of you because you're supposed to serve all of us, not just some of us.